So I would like to call upon Mr. Ramnath, Vaidyanathan, AVP and Head Environmental Sustainability from Godrej Industries Limited and Associated Companies, Ms. Shilpashree, Muniswamappa, Director for Corporate Communication, CSR and ESG, Colgate-Palmolive India Limited, Dr. Supriya Sharma, Executive Director, BrainGlow Business Services Private Limited, Mr. Mathew Mathai, Director, Financial Advisory, Deloitte India, Ms. Shilpa Jaiswal, Head CSR, JKCement. And to moderate this panel, I would like to call upon none other than the Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Mr. Pratyush Panda, Head ESG LTIMindtree. Can we have a huge round of applause, guys?
Please take your seat. So, COVID normally and last 6 month time, it's also fading out from all our mindsets, talks everywhere. And probably after a year or so, again, the COVID as a word and a conference type, we are again going to discuss. Purpose of putting COVID, post-COVID is not more about COVID, but how COVID has changed and brought transformation into entire process of CSR and sustainability, mostly with respect to ESG. That we need to discuss. So one thing I have very closely seen in CSR, the rampant spend, when initially CSR started, people started spending, the people started approaching the low-hanging fruits like, education mein kuch kar do, reaching out to school, creating the boundary wall, giving 2 classrooms, somebody giving desk banks, somebody giving notebooks, without thinking that whether it is going to yield result on quality of learnings or not. And now the post-COVID, what we've seen, the spend towards climate change, climate risks is trending. If you see last 2-3 years of spending post-COVID, you'll see there is a rocket jump with respect to climate related on biodiversity, forestry, agroforestry, mangroves. Spending has gone up. That is one trend I have personally seen. Second one, on long-term health-related spending. It's no more like, again, infra for the health, but some of the long-term disease control kind of thing, vector-borne control disease, all those spend has also gone up post-COVID time. And from where this money is coming out, it's not necessarily coming out by, not spending on education or livelihood, but the total spend amount is also, there is a quantum jump. That addition also going towards this area. Plus, there is some shift in and reduction in the education-related budget that we also have seen. And again, one more trend we have seen in post-COVID is lot of corporate NGOs started going deeper into interiors of India, especially eastern and northeast, especially in the name of aspirational district. This is 3 trend I personally witnessed: corporate NGOs going into aspirational districts, spending on new projects on post-COVID on climate-related risk resilience activities, and also reducing a bit of education infra-related work. So before we go ahead on those lines, you have gone through the list of panelists along with us. Let me start with Mr. Mathew from Deloitte. He has seen this entire CSR sector not being within the sector, in the ecosystem, but with a distance as a monitor on behalf of Deloitte for the sector. Mr. Mathew, if you can help us to know what you have seen pre-COVID and mostly what are the major transformation that has taken place?
If we were to divide, the genesis of CSR in India from a period from 2014 to 2021, and we use 2021 since the amendments came out as a watershed moment. I think pre and post, one of the big things was, of course, the changes in regulation and compliance. Senior members of corporates were being called out. For example, the CFOs of every corporate need to sign off on the utilization. That was a huge huge landmark change. And the impact was not only felt at the corporate level, we also saw the trickle-down effect happening on a lot of the implementing partners and NGOs, because they had to now start providing utilization certificates, which we were reviewing. So I think one big fundamental shift was in terms of compliance and regulation. A lot of our clients that we're working with are first and foremost concerned in particular about how their companies are doing CSR, aspects of that, and ensuring compliance to regulation. I think the other thing that has also drastically changed, and again, this has come about because of the amendments, because impact assessments are now mandatory for certain projects. I think the concept of data, how data is stored, how data is viewed, how data is analyzed internally has now started taking precedence. So when we're assisting a lot of our clients coming up with their strategy, we are asked to spend time on creating monitoring frameworks, evaluation frameworks. And the third part linked to this is capacity development of a lot of the partners that are on the field. A big disconnect was, sitting in large metropolitan cities where we're aware, we have knowledge of the changes in regulations. That doesn't always trickle down to the partners who are implementing it on the ground. So another huge area that we've seen a change is there has been a concerted effort and requirement from our corporate clients to focus on the capacity development of the partners. And the last thing I'll touch upon is the shift in thematic areas which corporates are funding on. Of course, during COVID, predominantly every client of mine had shifted close to 50% of their budgets for health, understandably. So whether it was providing access to healthcare or providing rehabilitation after COVID, I think that since 2021, if I just look at the last 2 years, things like food security, things like elements of climate change, and how do we empower societies, how do we build resilience amongst our farming communities, how do we empower them? There has been a shift, which I think is fantastic, because most corporates, in the last 10-15 years that I've been in this space, have shied away from areas like food security because they're always like, this is somebody else's responsibility. And I think that fundamental shift has happened where they're like, it's also our responsibility as a player in the ecosystem.
And do you sincerely feel that CSR is contributing to a bigger extent now post-COVID on food security, if at all? If you can highlight some of the innovations or the cases in case you'd like to highlight on those lines.
Sure. Great question. Now, food security as a concept, again, is something that's still very nascent, especially in our country, even though 75% of our population is in the agrarian sector. We're working in and around agriculture. Is there enough food? Is the quality of food available? Is that enough to last us for the next decade or so? There have been so many innovations that have now started coming about. You've seen a lot of incubations that are happening, especially for agri-tech. Health tech, it is always happening, but some of these innovations in agri-tech have really helped empower the base farmers and the farming communities. So technology innovations along with just brass tacks, capacity development, training. And the third part is, the triangle is social protection and resilience. How do you empower communities? How do you ensure that in case, there's a drought, that they're able to come out of this? So there's always a buffer. So a lot of my clients are creating sustainable livelihood programs. So over and above what they're doing on their fields, can we provide, using technology solutions, can we provide them with alternative livelihood?
Thank you, Mathew. I'll now go to Shilpa as a seasoned professionals from the sector who have seen both sides of the coin. The civil society to the biggest extent with a global focus and with INGO supports, and also with CSR. Shilpa, tell us what are some of the transformation that we have seen post-COVID on the CSR as a sector, and if you can highlight with some of the cases from your organization, company, or beyond as well.
Yeah. So I think one of the major transition which I have seen after post-COVID is that the CSR before COVID was more like an obligation, right? But after COVID, I think not only the CSR but even the government and the community understood the importance of partnership, and the CSR could bring on table. I think the more strategic approach towards how the CSR should be implemented, that was the major shift which has happened. Second, I think a major change which I see is going to the last mile, and the way CSR like us, we are a manufacturing company and we are based in the rural of the communities, and the way we can reach out there. I think that was the the best thing we brought on the table, because most of the CSR, especially the Indian companies, their factories, their units are based in the rural part, and the connect they have with the last mile. I think reaching to the last mile was possible because the CSR came on board. Third shift which I saw was the collaboration. I think a lot of collaboration happened post-COVID. Before COVID, I hardly saw two corporates coming and working on one project, or maybe partnering or leveraging convergence. So I think that is the major shift which I have seen post-COVID. Thematic areas wise, if we see, the shift has shifted towards health, but slowly with the ESG, because after post-COVID, ESG has also picked up. So the integration of ESG in the CSR themes, like the presentation with Ennoble, the way they talked about ESG. So I think that's the beauty of it, the shift that has come in. So these are the major changes which I see. Lot of things have changed. I can go on and on, like digital, understanding the digital gap, transforming the digital gap, and I think valuing that and investing into that. That is also a shift which has happened. So if you look at the last 10 years journey of CSR, we are going to complete a decade of CSR. Post-COVID and after pre-COVID, there is a drastic, there is a clear trajectory which you can see. Before COVID, the approach and the way CSRs were doing, it was completely different. But after COVID, it is completely different at all levels. At corporate levels, it has become a serious business. Professionals are being hired, teams have been established, because they also understood the power of reaching out to the community and what changes they can bring. At community level, I think acceptance has been there. They also know that the corporates, which was there earlier also, but the way the things were handled by the corporate, I think that realization and that expectations and that synergies that at government level, I think there is the major change which has happened. Because government, I think post-COVID, one of the major change which has happened is the government has realized the power of CSR. And government has realized how much the corporates can bring on board and can contribute to the welfare agenda. So I think that's the take from my side here.
Just elaborate how this digital transformation part has taken place post-COVID.
So I think post-COVID, at rural level, there was no digitalization in terms of in education, in health. I think after COVID, that has been contributed. Now companies are investing in digitalization. They are investing into infrastructure which can minimize the gap of digital which is there. So lot of schools have been made during COVID also. Lot of CSR contributed in providing mobile phones, computers, and now also they are building that kind of infrastructure so that with less resources you can achieve more out of it. So building into schools, digitalization of school, even telemedicine, telehealth. So that is something which has come up. So I think that is the major change in digital transformation which I can talk about.
Thank you, Shilpa. Let me go to Supriya now. Supriya, any supplementary points what you heard just now from Shilpa?
Certainly.
Would you like to add on more onto that same text?
My greetings to everyone, and thank you for that question, Mr. Pratyush. What was the best thing that COVID did to you? That's what I would like to know from you. What was the best thing that COVID did to you? Anybody from the audience who would like to answer, please go ahead.
Take this one.
Hello everyone, I'm Nobonita Banerjee. So during COVID, I was helpless, and I'm basically taking care of my children that time, and also working in an international organization. I belong from WHO, and during COVID, I thought what to do with this extra time that I'm getting. Why not start my old organization and quit my job? So this was something which came to my mind, and COVID has actually made me an entrepreneur. So this is the change that has actually bring into the system, into my system.
We appreciate that, Ms. Banerjee. Anyone else? Any one more addition? please.
Personally, if I'll talk about how I have been changed during the time of COVID, is actually digitally inclined. Previously we were meeting physically, but after COVID, everything is very virtual now, which I feel in professional is good, which can, ultimately it is cost effective for the management and everyone. So that is what I have been my experience.
That's nice to hear. So COVID, in some way or the other, has been a positive impact to some of our lives, if not all, at least. I do acknowledge that there would be more people who would like to share, and I do hope that in future we would have more time to listen to everyone. Now, what COVID did to businesses, the good part is only what I'm going to talk about. What it did great for our businesses was, it gave us the opportunity to re-examine what is it that we as businesses can do for the society. So there is a beautiful term called CSR, Corporate Social Recognition, do I call it? Or responsibility. Okay, thank you for correcting that, gentleman. Corporate Social Responsibility. Responsibility in real? Do we think it's a responsibility? When as parents we have kids at home and we have to take care of them, or the elderly is at home and we look after them and we give them all the care and affection, do we consider them as responsibility? Then why we as businesses, we have grown up from the same society where we are operating and we are calling that society a responsibility on us? That, I believe, is a change in notion that has come post-COVID in majority of the corporates. It's no more a responsibility, but it is a lifestyle. Now, some of us might want to argue here or discuss here that no, it's not because that we feel it's a lifestyle. It is because we have a mandate, we have a compliance case, and we have to have ourselves right there on the screens being able to promote our brands and our services and our products, saying, yes, we do care for the society. So if you do care for the society, that's nothing great that we are doing in caring for the society. We have grown up here and it is a part of our lifestyle. It's ingrained in us. It is a part of us. You take care of your legs and your hands. You don't say that it's my responsibility to take care of my hands and my legs. They are yours. They are part of you. Likewise, the society that we live in, the society that we operate in as businesses are a part of us. And that post-COVID change in notion has brought the companies to understand, to replicate in business, that it is not just the funding that we are looking for in the society. It's not just the funding that I can provide to the society. It is the skill. It is the capability. It is the expertise that I hold as a business is what my society needs in addition to the funding. 32 million people were driven to poverty during COVID in our country. 70% of all the work which is done towards women empowerment was undone during COVID because of the gender gap that was built up. Now, how do we make up for that loss? Sure. I am very delighted to see that you all have the funding present here. That's great. But do we also have an equally good strategy? That is what we need to think now in the present day, in the post-COVID, where businesses have already made up for what we had lost to some extent during COVID. Are we looking at having a strong strategy in place? So strategy, as some of us might say, is a plan. So having a plan might not make a great sense unless we have strong-minded people also out there in the field who are going to implement that plan. And an example was shared by my colleague here, Mathew, Mr. Mathew, and he mentioned that there were to be capacity development programs for the people who are working on the ground. Now that is a part of innovation. Not that it did not exist before. It has always been there. We know it. It's just that how do we incorporate it in our business? What are the innovative practices that we are bringing forward? And to elaborate on this, one more point very quickly I would want to make here is the governance aspect of it. how governance has been able to bring about a change in CSR. I am having to put in real courage to control myself to say something that might not be liked by many of us here. So if given a chance, I might spurt it out in the later stage, or I might keep it to myself. But governance is the key issue which has been targeted post-COVID. And again, some of the companies, if not all, are looking towards how strong governance, being a part of CSG, can be brought into CSR to make it as ethical as it should be. Ethics is the key word here, because we are in the CSR and there's nothing more sacred in the organization than the kind of work that we do and the kind of projects that we deal with. That's from my side.
Thank you, Supriya. Very aptly said the last word of yours, governance. We'll certainly be covering now. So we heard about the transformation changes that took place. I'm just reading out some of the key words like collaborations, partnerships, some innovation, digital transformation, taking CSR seriously and as a long-term project. These are some of the major things that we have seen in last 2 years post-COVID. Now let me go to rest of the two panelists. Those were equally experts in addition to CSR on sustainability side also. So Ram, you can conclude. Let me start with her itself first on ESG. Again, same question. What are the major transformation processes that you have seen? Is it because ESG, that there are some school of thought saying because CSR is not able to perform? No, ESG is growing up in Indian mindset. One. Second, the ESG is more a buzzword than on work on ground zero. Third is, it's not our cup of tea, it is for the Western world. So again, what are the transformation things that you have seen on ESG? Let us start with you and then we'll go to Ram to sum it up.
Sure. Thanks, Pratyush ji, and thank you everybody for, I think, very valuable insights on what COVID did and how it moved the needle. I also agree with what Mr. Panda said, which is a lot of people feel it's a buzzword. A lot of us want it on our visiting cards. A lot of us want to talk about it. But I think one needs to understand that both CSR, sustainability, ESG, they're all intertwined. They're in the same family. If you think of it, we were looking at women childcare, we were looking at literacy, we were already doing healthcare, we were doing energy, water related stuff, education based stuff in CSR in any case. And I think, India should take kudos for the fact that the CSR norms are only in this country, not other countries are clueless about this whole concept. And like he said, I think they picked up on ESG, which is a larger block, but CSR is in that family, and the way we should look at it is that it's a very key contributor to any of this. And the good thing that happened is, while we did a lot of things which are project related, I think the whole sustainability and ESG umbrella has made us think slightly more strategic, right? Say for example, from a corporate angle, if I were to see, and I'm sure Ram will agree because he works in a firm which is similar to ours, is the left hand and the right hand will not talk, right? CSR keeps doing what they want to do. Your supply chain keeps doing what they want to do. Your ultimate goals are in a way the same, whether it's on water, whether it's on, women childcare, whether it's on people, but then we did it two different ways. I think this is an opportunity to bring it together and see how is it that the narrative can be built. And I also know that a lot of them from both sides don't look eye to eye. It's true, right? Because हर जगह पे credit के लिए मारामारी है. HR will not give credit on people thing to somebody else. Somebody will not give to somebody else. That's always there. But I think there's only a win-win if we collaborate, even internally, because then your narrative becomes stronger. Like, I'm fairly new in Colgate, and I can tell you a few things that we've done is like, we work a lot around oral healthcare, obviously, because that's where we want to impact the nation and move the needle positively. And on supply chain, for example, we are the first ones to have what's called a recyclable, tube. While there's a lot of companies are working on a lot of FMCG companies as well on plastic neutrality, everything. But on a toothpaste, we were the first ones, and that's like, I think I told this in a seminar recently as well. 5 million toothpaste tubes, 5 billion and minimum 2 billion brushes every year India consumes. Now, we are thinking of the Nike shoes and the H&M clothes, what's happening. But is anybody thinking of this? We've thought about it. We've started working on it. And we look at collaborating. Now, the whole thing is, you can't do it as CSR, right? You have to have a larger narrative. And that's where sustainability comes in. And I think we should not look at it as versus. We should look at it as plus. And whether we like it or no, a lot of countries don't understand CSR. You tell them CSR, they're like, what is CSR? They'll ask you for the full form. You can check with a lot of people. But they do understand ESG. So it's fine. They understand that language. We talk to them in that language. We ensure that we can bring in, and a lot of us, a lot of our companies have global goals that we all align with, right? Whether it's on water or energy and things like that. It's a way to contribute, and I think we should not look at it as competition. We should look at it as Colgate example as well. It was two different functions before I joined. Right? I mean, when I was bought in, they put in the whole corporate communication piece, CSR and ESG under one team. And my own teams now actually see that there's so much synergy and we're doing better than what we were thinking in the past. Otherwise, there were two brains, two hats thinking and not collaborating. But now it becomes much more easier and you can move the needle on everything. And on every narrative of CSR, you can bring in a sustainability piece. Or every story on sustainability, you can actually bring in a CSR piece, which is kind of making it, because I'll tell you, one example, we do a lot of things in our plants to say, we want to do water better, energy better, plastic better. Can we expand that same good practice to the people who are in and around our places? That's your first win. And what is that you'll do beyond your boundary walls is CSR. Right? So your narrative on these pieces will become larger, deeper, better, stronger, brighter the moment you decide to go beyond. I think that's what this has done as an advantage.
Very, very well explained, Shilpashree. Seriously, a round of applause. Yes. Look, audience says it's all. It's very easy when both the functions, sustainability, CSR comes together under one umbrella, because I could relate when she was, I look after the board at LTIMindtree. Current year, what I did first is, by talking to my sustainability team and the best of the NGOs partners available on the climate action related ground, almost like 42% of the total budget was put aside. And this was managed by sustainability team as a CSR project. But remaining is for CSR team to let them do whatever education, livelihood, XYZ. And today, as when I'm talking, already have planted more than 37 lakhs in current year. 2 million, 20 lakhs mangroves. 1500 acres of conservation going on is on Raigad district on deep forest conservations. More than 10,000 eco-chulas on the buffer zone area. And these are all humanly possible because both teams started talking to each other. Even if there are two heads, if you start collaborating within, you can easily have multiplier effect in your CSR program for sure. Now I'll go to Ram to sum it up nicely on those lines.
Very difficult task left to me, but just want to
before that, let me commitment to all my equally learned people sitting here. Write down your question very specific, smart, and very precise. We'll honor at least 5-7 questions if time permits. Over to you.
So I just want to start off with a caveat. I am probably the least qualified to talk about CSR in this hall today. My experience with CSR only began when I joined Godrej in 2019. I am from a complete environmental science, environmental sustainability background. Having said that, it's very interesting you mentioned the point about CSR and sustainability and ESG where they really beat. The team at Godrej that I joined, which I now look after, was called Good and Green. So it was formulated with the idea that good and green have to go together. So it was way back in 2011, it was formalized as the good and green philosophy, which is what all of our ESG work really falls under. So what really ties CSR and ESG? And this is something I've learned over the last few years, having worked primarily on ESG, but also on a lot of green CSR projects, is purpose. What does an organization stand for? And the purpose of an organization is what really binds ESG and CSR together. CSR for me is only a subset of the S part of ESG. And unfortunately, success in CSR is still thought of as compliance with 2%. It's about how much you spend. It's not about the outcomes you create. The minute you start linking your CSR projects and you become more picky about your CSR projects, which align with your purpose, you will see that you're more passionate about the outcome rather than ensuring that the compliance box is checked. So, just to give you an example, I think post-COVID, one thing we have done is we've sort of aggregated a lot of our projects to have a few larger projects which we want to focus on rather than have a lot of smaller projects. Also because of purpose. Because you end up diluting purpose to an extent when you try to spread yourself too thin. One of our flagship projects is a project called Embed, which was the prevention of vector-borne disease, dengue and malaria. And that made instant sense to us, say, 5 years ago when we started, because what does Godrej manufacture? Household insecticides. It's our purpose to rid India of dengue and malaria. We go to work every day, that team goes to work every day focused on creating products for that. So how do we go about building CSR programs that help us achieve this purpose to a larger extent? I'm very happy to, I don't want to go through the details of all our projects, but this was a project where we were actually able to take Madhya Pradesh, some of the most rural areas, from a category 3 state to a category 1 state. And we've now tied up with the Government of India, the National Ministry of Health, to take this project to Uttar Pradesh and to Maharashtra to look at urban dengue and malaria as well. Now, it works the other way around as well. One of our ESG philosophies is to have as little impact on the planet as possible, which is, Shilpashree mentioned, energy, water, waste. How do I use all of these more judiciously, and how do I waste less? So, as a company which has a huge plastic footprint, working on waste management just made absolute sense for us. So we did a lot of waste management projects. As a company which consumed water, we had a target of being water positive as a company. So we said, okay, let's do watershed programs to really help the people who are in most need of it, in the most droughted areas of India, to really recharge water. The lessons learned from that have actually helped fine-tune our ESG strategy and our business strategy. What I mean by that is, let me paint you a little story. I'm not going to take too much time. When we wanted to be water positive and did these watershed programs, today we are 7x water positive. So which means for every 1 liter of water that we withdraw, we add 7 liters back to the environment. And we did this in collaboration with NABARD, fantastic CSR project. When I was asked, does that mean we don't have to worry about water anymore? I said, no. Because water stress is still a major area of focus for us. And lessons learned from this are now driving our water stewardship program around our own facilities. Which again was Shilpashree meant. Is it enough for me to be well behaved? No. I need to take everybody else around me and I needed to pass on that sort of capacity building to them as well. So that is a classic example of how ESG led to CSR, CSR led back to ESG, and both work really well together. Now fundamentally, if I look at it purely from a business perspective, CSR also gives you a social license to operate, both in the communities in which you operate as well as your consumers. Consumers want to buy from socially right companies, socially good companies. They force you to create good products, green products. And a lot of that is what fuels our future growth strategy. So for me, I don't even think of CSR and ESG as those two must talk together, but they are a fundamental part of your company's core existence. Your future strategy, your de-risking, everything that you create for a new generation and for the planet's well-being has to have an element of ESG and CSR in it. So I think it's time we stop discussing about CSR as if it's some separate entity and realize it for what it is. It's an extension of our organization's social purpose. So that's the philosophy which we really respect.
Two key takeaway from Ram is, within whole ESG, on the G part, a subset can be CSR. Having said that doesn't undermine. It itself is a very big in shape and size, especially with the fund and also the commitment. Second, he also talked about compliance. Let CSR should not be compliance. For me, I always say, for me, compliance is like intent in your mathematics exam, you are getting 35 out of 100 is your compliance. Can this journey go from compliance to excellence? Start trying to get 95 out of 100. We all need to work on those lines. And for that, here is a beautiful example like we have heard, how it complements each other. Before I take your question, let me have one last round with all my panelists. One key line will start with Shilpa and end with Shilpashree. One line, how you see Shilpa, I mean, question for all. It's not, we have seen the transformation post-COVID. From now onwards, say 2030, how CSR, ESG, sustainability is going to, what is that you can see ahead of the curve is going to come in front of us so that we can enlighten the house itself.
So how I see CSR will be in next 10 or 20 years will be, I think projects will be more sustainable, which were currently, especially in CSR space, it was more activity based. But now I see lot of, because of ESG and sustain. See, for development sectors, sustainability was never an issue. I have been in development sector for many years. I have never designed a project which was not sustainable, right? We always had an exit plan. So, but after CSR came in, there was a lot of activity-based intervention which was happening. But I think a lot of sustainable development which I can see which will happen and reaching to the last mile. So that is something corporates can, like ours can contribute.
More sustainable CSR projects. Yes, Ram.
Just two particular insights in this. One is that if we think that COVID was a disruptor, just wait till climate change really hits. Now, the climate crisis is going to be a bigger disruptor than anything we've ever seen before in our life. So I think COVID was an eye-opener to really prepare us for that. Secondly, I see the future of CSR and ESG similar to how financial indicators are used. In the next 5 to 10 years, I would not be surprised if, similar to how companies have to justify a carbon price or a water price, you will have to see a social price. What is the value you're creating on your CSR per rupee that you spend? That will have to be reported upon, that will have to be audited, and people will really need to put their money where their mouth is.
It's like Prabhu Ram's voice. Get ready for water pricing and carbon pricing. Yes, Supriya.
So I might sound a little out of track, but what I see is going to happen in the next 20 years, because 10 might be too small, just that we take a little time to adapt to change. CSR is not going to be just another job function in the organization, or, as we all know, the most disregarded job function in the organization, but it is going to be a value that is going to be ingrained in each of the employees, each of the team members of the organization. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, it is not a responsibility, it is the way we live, and it is the way we make an impact to the place where we have risen from. So it is going to be ingrained in our system as we have our blood today.
So it should be cross-cutting into your DNA kind of, for all of us. Yes, ma'am.
I think there's been a bunch of interesting points that have already been made. Just from my perspective, I do see, and I think Ram had mentioned this, the next 5 to 10 years in terms of climate change, whether it's water security, food security, whether it's health, there are going to be multiple issues that are going to come. And, I think like a lot of the panelists have said, I do see a lot more collaboration. I think the perspective in which, or the lens in which CSR and ESG are viewed, which are in separate silos, I do see them break down and merge into one. Only because the challenges are going to be so many that it's going to be, tough to do it piecemeal. So just the integrated approach, I feel, is something that's already happening, but I see a lot more of it moving forward.
So more collaboration, more integration, and more integration between CSR sustainability in-house through ESG. Yes, Shilpashree.
I think everybody's made a lot of good points. Maybe I'll pick up on one thing that I see the way going forward is, and I'll pick up on collaboration. I think a few years ago, or till even today, maybe for a few of us, collaborating with government, or for government to collaborate with corporate, is all about donate karo. They were not looking at impact, they were just looking at funding coming in to be able to do social projects. I think that's moving, and the government has started also thinking on just from the whole CSR lens to a more, okay, can they do something related to whether it's skilling, whether it's water, whether it's green, whether it's environment. The government has also started thinking like, the ESG types, the sustainability types for the country. Next is collaboration between corporates, which is a challenge, but not an impossibility. Because if we were to come together with the same kind of vision that we all have, and keeping aside the fact कि finally इस project का नाम किसको credit मिलेगा, I think that's the biggest challenge that any of us sitting over here face, saying that, we want to put monies together and do stuff. Then the whole point is, will the name be Godrej or will the name be Colgate-Palmolive? If we go beyond that, we can achieve much more because you get more strength, more funding, more depth, more strategy, more reach. So I think in the next few years, we will see this kind of collaboration. I'm already seeing it happening. Some companies are much more mature, some are not. And topics that are maturing, I think this will happen. Government and corporate and corporate and corporate. That's the way I see
Brilliant, Shilpashree. We will be taking as advised by host, can be taking 2 questions, but my commitment, I'll answer your question 1-to-1 also. If you are coming out question, yes sir, make it very precise and short, simple. And also introduce yourself.
Thanks for such an enlightening session and the whole program today. My name is Dr. Ranjeev Manrao. We run a charitable trust for last 3 decades, and all of you saw us on stage doing something. Now, coming to the question directly without spending any time, yes, I'm thankful to Supriya ji for stressing too much on CSR. I just tried to elaborate in a different manner. I could not get a chance to ask you the question when you asked a question to react to that. I've created something else, and my question is only, do you agree to that or not? We are talking about collaboration.
Quickly, sir.
Yeah. It is CSR is coming together. C, S is serving, and R is the real God. The real God lies in the bottom of the pyramid. Do you agree to that or not? Thank you.
My gratitude to you, Dr. Ranjit, and we really appreciate the kind of definition, a new definition that you have provided to CSR. And as I spoke of how sacred the profession is that we are into, and how beautifully you have amplified it, saying it is the service to God. So service to humanity, as we've been taught since childhood, is actual service to God. But the fact is, somehow as we start progressing in our lives, we school, we college, we go back to the corporates, and then we get so busy with our lives that we forget what the real matter of serving is. So there is something known as the servant leadership. And servant leadership, not just it is a buzzword in the corporate these days. However, the fact is, anybody or everybody here or beyond this who believes or thinks that serving is beyond them, then they must be ready to also believe that leadership is beyond them. Because unless we are ready to serve, serving is not being a servant. So you come to my house, I bring you coffee. That does not mean that I am your servant. I am your host. That is the case. So we have to all agree on a definition of being servant leaders, as that is the place where we will be really looking at how our job or our profile in the organization really serves not only the business but everybody else around. Because at the end of the day, when we go to our graves, it's not just our bank account that carries us along. So it is all left behind. It is the great deed that is being talked of. It is the great service that we've done to the humanity and the people around us.
Break maybe.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hello.
One more, but very precise. Yes, I'll come to you, sir, 1-to-1.
So, good afternoon. This is Siddharth Nikam from Vaidyanathan Foundation, led by the social entrepreneur Bhagwan Keshwat. So, my direct question is to the panelists that we know that how environmental harms we already done in this now, and what is the sustainable strategy to take the corrective actions for that? We know that the air is not good for the breath
in Mumbai also, and 6 out of 10 people are in the recent survey tell that they don't want to stay in Mumbai. They want to relocate from the Mumbai because the environment is not good for you. So the straightforward question is, so what is the corrective actions we have to take regarding this? Thank you.
So he's trying to say that environment is going towards negative, like migration out of Mumbai, out of Delhi is what people are looking at. What is it that we should do to correct this? So I'll just take if you ask me, whose responsibility is environment? It's everybody's, but people staying here or corporates cannot decide on how city's climate is going to change. We are only a small piece in that jigsaw puzzle, so the responsibility cannot be on corporates. So when I always tell the sustainability, for example, especially FMCG companies, I think just because we produce stuff, people assume that it's our responsibility, but there's a user as well. So I think environment is a larger issue. So if you ask me, we should play a role towards positivity, but are we the ones who can actually move the needle a lot? No, there's government, there are people and stuff like that. Anybody else wants to
discuss
add?
more, sir. Let's not take Mumbai in the route Delhi has gone. Thank you, everyone. We'll close here.
I would like to call upon Ms. Preeti Pachpande, Director, ASM Group, to felicitate this august panel, starting with Mr. Pratyush Panda, Head ESG, LTIMindtree. May we have the memento, please?